Sorry, I was on mute. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the closure panel of our CEP, our Cybersecurity Executive Program. We're super excited to be closing with this amazing panel today with one of the most critical topics that are going around. And we're super excited and thankful with HSBC for collaborating with us and MetaBaseQ to build this across the region. We're excited about having the different participants from the panel to talk about why a collective defense approach is critical, and everything depends on how easy and not being the weakest link, right? So with that said, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the different speakers. They were out and you were reading through them, but we're very fortunate to have John Waters, former president and CEO of Mandiant. He's on the board of Google now on that aspect, and he's a lead independent director for MetaBaseQ. We have Jorge Arce. Thank you for doing this with us, from CEO of HSBC. Pablo Carretino, CEO of Interbanking Argentina. We have Andre Fleury, Director of Cybersecurity for Accenture Brazil. We have Barbara Meisner, Executive Director for the Private Association in Uruguay. Juan Downey, Chief Information Security for the Asociación de Bancos in Chile. So we couldn't be happier with a panel like this that's really spreading across the region. And this topic around collective defense, which is critical for all of us, so we can be proactive instead of reactive. It's an amazing way to close these executive programs. So with that said, I pass some of the initial words to John so he can share with us about why this is important, what has he seen around the globe, and why as a society in the region in Latin America, we need to start working together to make this happen. So John, thank you for joining us, and excited to have you.
Thank you very much, Mauricio. So it's an honor to be a part of this panel this morning. Thank you for joining. It's good to be in Mexico City. We have beautiful weather. Met a lot of people that are very interested in the same topics and the same concerns that I've shared for a very long time in cybersecurity and the protection of our interests as societies, as citizens, as economies, and sovereign nations. So I started off my career in finance and economics, and actually worked at the same business for a while here with my friend Jorge from HSBC in New York City, middle market banking, wealth management. Moved to Dallas, managed all the wealth for a family. So I really looked at the world through the lens of finance and economics and how you invest scarce resources to create returns. Then I shifted into the cybersecurity industry in 2002 after looking at industries that I thought were very inefficient but had growth forever. And unfortunately, cybersecurity has had growth forever and will continue to have growth forever because there's such an advantage for the attacker over the defender that it's just natural that crime moves into that spectrum, information operations moves into that spectrum, disruptive attacks moves into that spectrum, and certainly cyber conflict amongst nations has moved into that spectrum. So I saw cybersecurity as an area that was really going to require a lot of focus, attention, and was a global problem. It wasn't a local problem, and it's something that we could all learn from each other and benefit from, sharing our experiences. So the major part of the industry that I thought was most inefficient is the fact that we had no understanding of who we were up against from an adversary perspective. You think of any one of your business operations, you know what the competitive landscape's like in your market, and what you need to do to compete effectively, pricing, performance, level of service, customer offers, conveniences. If you're going to go into a new country, you understand the geopolitical risk. You know the landscape. In sports, you study the other team. You understand their tendency, what they're good at, what they're bad at. You study their strengths and weaknesses. So you learn how to compete effectively. But in cyberspace, we had no idea of who these adversaries were. They used to be characterized early in 2000s as, teenage hackers in the basement. That was the problem. Well, I think we've all learned it's well beyond teenage hackers in the basement. So I started my career and really helped build the cyber intelligence industry as a way to inform defenders. Here are the attackers. Here's how they attack you. Here are the tools they use. the tradecraft they use, the infrastructure they use, and here's what they're going after. So you have an idea of what you're up against and how you can defend against it effectively. So that initial launch into the cybersecurity industry for me 20 years ago was born through the lens of economic rationale. Because as the problem is so vast and there's so many ways an attacker can attack you, you really need to study the ways that they're actually using. Because you can't protect against everything. If you try to, you'll protect nothing. You have to protect against those known threats that are active against your sector and active in your region or an adjacent region. If you think of, for example, the recent attacks in Mexico, against the Ministry of Defense, the same exact attack methodology and tools were used against the same vulnerability in Costa Rica and Uruguay as well. Chile prior, in Chile and Costa Rica. So if you're just watching what's happening around you, you can say, this might be coming to me soon. So what we built in these global enterprises that I've been fortunate enough to build and run and manage all the way into Mandiant and now part of Google Cloud, as chairman of the Mandiant Strategic Advisory Board and former president and COO, is building insight globally into threats around the world, taking that knowledge and giving it to customers around the world so they can learn from other people's mistakes. And that's the simplest form of intelligence you'll ever find. And it takes the shape of collective defense and community defense. Because we all have scarce resources, and you need to apply those scarce resources effectively against threats that present the biggest danger and risk to your organizations. In order to do that, you need to know what those threats are that are active and be able to understand the consequences of those threats if they're successfully executed against you. So through that lens, I worked very closely with the US government 20 years ago as they stood up information sharing, formal information sharing in the financial services institutions in the United States. We called it the FSISAC, Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center. It's an independent center. All the banks and financial institutions were joining. And they did it because they realized, not unlike you here in Latin America, how interdependent they were in each other. If one part of that financial ecosystem breaks, it all breaks. So we're so interdependent on each other, from banking to clearing to transfers to SWIFT to you name it, all the ecosystem custody of the banking system. We're really interdependent on a lot of each other and third parties in that process. So they formalized it. I was one of the commercial entities that helped stand it up and support it. Treasury originally funded it, and that went from initially 10 members to now 4,000 or 5,000 members. And it is very well run and organized and funded by the community, and is completely independent. So as talking to Mauricio in Mexico and Latin America, I was surprised to find out that this really didn't exist in Latin America, this level of sharing. And people, like you are in your day-to-day competitive practices, compete. So you compete with other banks in the region. So the concept of sharing information about your weaknesses, potentially, if it's viewed as a weakness, is really something that's uncomfortable. But when people realize, set our competitive parts aside as a banking institution, we're all together on this fight against the adversary. And the only way we can help each other, the only way we can protect effectively, is help each other. You've seen this ranging from casinos in Las Vegas, when there's a known actor that is compromising a casino. All the casinos share information. They share the picture. Everybody knows who that actor is, and they're blackballed from the entire casino population, not just the one that they were compromising. They help each other. Banks often share here and elsewise. If there's someone that's been a known bank robber in a certain bank and they've got the description of the bank robber, they share it with all the other banks. So in physical risks, people become more comfortable saying, hey, there's something that's known bad. We can help each other. In cyberspace, that really hasn't happened. And the opportunity exists to very, very cost effectively and efficiently create the best intelligence source you're going to find and help each other. Because you may be the target today and you're helping everyone else protect themselves from that same attacker. And tomorrow, you may be the beneficiary of someone else being attacked first. But that community defense model we found to be effective all over the world. And the commercial part of my life and the intelligence world provides a sharing arrangement that is global and operational in 100 different countries. For example, when you talk of the cyber debate, Mandiant as a commercial entity is supporting and defending critical infrastructure in the Ukraine right now in cyber war. So you have a commercial entity responding to breaches in cyber war in another country to help them restore. And we, by doing that, know exactly the tools and the tradecraft that are being used, to target critical infrastructure, to target banks, to target communications, to target healthcare systems. That allows you to take that knowledge and say, if someone was going to target me with the same exact capability, could I defend myself? So that knowledge really gives you a competitive advantage and ability to stay at pace with the adversary. The adversaries lead innovation, in this industry. All we do is try to shrink the distance between adversary innovation and our innovation. And right now, from my assessment in Latin America, there's a real gap, a significant gap. In fact, I had a radio interview this morning, and the question was around the incident with the Ministry of Defense in Mexico. Was this a sophisticated adversary using artificial intelligence to find out where the gaps were in the environment and conduct this highly sophisticated attack? To which my answer was, this was a vulnerability that's been known for a year and a half that was unpatched. This is simple, basic hygiene of protecting yourself. The adversaries will only use the minimal viable capability to succeed. They won't roll out advanced attacks if they could be successful using basic attacks. So you have an opportunity to bring up your basic level of security in Latin America, which will do a great job of really reducing the number of attackers that can compromise your institutions and your customers downstream. So I know there's a level of awareness that's now rising in Latin America, and there's an opportunity through collective defense to really accelerate the time by which you can become very efficient and effective of managing these cyber threats together. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mauricio, and thank you again for your time.
John, thank you for sharing. I think you were explaining it right, that we're thinking that all these things are super sophisticated, and we're realizing that it's just maintenance things that we haven't done in the past. And as John is mentioning, is we see that are coming because the attacks are being replicated, and with the opportunities of lack of regulation in the region, plus the lack of data sharing information on that, we're becoming reactive instead of proactive. So it's going to be very interesting to hear from the different countries some of the landscape and the perspectives that we get in there. But this is a great start to start thinking about how do we collaborate together and start building a structure that's already working in other places around the world that we can leverage from and make something much more meaningful within the region. So this is why this panel is super interesting. And Jorge, I pass it on to you so you can talk a little bit to us about what's going on in Mexico.
Yeah, I have to say that it's enlightening to speak to John, and I have to say that also he scared the hell out of me when you talk to him. And one of the things that I think an institution like HSBC globally has an immense amount of resources, technology, know-how. We share best practices among countries from different development stages. But at the end of the day, you operate locally, and you're as good as your weakest link within this ecosystem. So this concept of collective defense, it's completely important. It's paramount to what we are doing and how we have to protect ourselves, especially in an environment like Mexico that's so interconnected. It's exchange of money almost immediately, or immediately actually, very few chances to stop somebody from doing something bad because it's so digital, so interconnected. So this concept of collective protection and how we work together. So what was the role of the US government in jumpstarting this process and how we can learn from that process to institute in Mexico as one, but we also throughout Latin America, because I think we also operate very closely with each other. So we can protect against global threats, and we see all these very cool maps that we have, and you see all these vectors attacking you from everywhere else. But what worries us is what happens from within the system, from within a local attack or a regional attack in one of the banks. So how do you jumpstart the process to start this collective defense against these threats?
Good question. I mean, the original mandate came from a presidential directive, executive order in 1998. And then 5 years later, 5 years after the executive order, Treasury, the deputy assistant secretary, his name was Scott Parsons, he's a friend of mine, actually had the same birthday, and so does his wife. Put up $2 million from Treasury to say, we'll get it started. And there were 3 vendors that said, we'll contribute. I was one of them. George Kurtz, who's now CrowdStrike, was a company called Foundstone. He was the other one. And a gentleman by the name of John Darbyshire, Archer Technologies, who said, we'll contribute our capability to help start this. So there was both a vendor and the government putting resources in, and we got the original 10 banks to join and then begin the process of sharing. What we did is we helped make sure there was an intelligence push. So you led with information. You didn't lead with asking for information. Mm-hmm. So you began to prime the pump and get people accustomed to seeing and consuming intelligence information. And then we began to see the sharing start back once we were sharing out. And then we used the other technology to take in the sharing. It's not just an email, but it's actually the technical description of how the attacker was successful with the context. And then we began to build the anonymous piece. So we didn't say this bank in this country was attacked. We just say this is an active threat against the financial institutions from a group we think is trying to do the following thing. That was enough for the security operators when they're looking at thousands and hundreds of thousands alert to say, I'm going to work on that one in terms of prioritizing limited resources against threats that matter, because they knew it was active in the region against one of their peers. So that really created prioritization in that area. And then we actually had effort to have scans for people's institutions when they didn't have their own scanning capability to see if they were vulnerable to that attack. So they had signed up to agree to a scan remotely, from the ISAC. So we started off with, there was resources from the government, there was a directive from the president, and the commercial sector stood up to participate and fund it. That funding from the government went away, and all the future funding came from the financial services institutions. And they actually gave it away to all the smaller banks that needed the information but didn't have the resources to participate. So what they found is most of the funding came from the top 100 institutions that they felt shared most of the risk. And those institutions were fine giving it away to the smaller, fintech and financial services that were part of their ecosystem, but didn't have the resources to play. So that's the way we jump started in the US, and that's measured out into Europe now and Asia. So the model's there. We're happy to share all of our lessons learned with Latin America and working with Metabase Q to help stand it up here in Latin America and give you guys the benefit of all of our experiences.
Okay. That's a paradigm shift, for example, for Mexico. I think, and all my colleagues in Latin America would face similar threats that we do, from social engineering to phishing to somebody trying to hack our ATMs. But somehow financial institutions see this on isolation on a fragmented basis. And I think that we need to work together, because at the end of the day, it's a technical solution, but it's really a cultural setting. It's an approach, right. It's a sense of how we encounter and counteract against a threat, but also an educational approach, how we prioritize within our investment, very limited investment budgets, and knowing that this is an unlimited amount of threats and will continue forever.
The one thing that's really important, Jorge, you as chairman and CEO of HSBC, you're not in a security function, but you own that responsibility and the risk. This needs to be led from the top, because security officers are going to be afraid to share information with competitors if their leadership team doesn't agree to it and actually support and promote it. So I think if you and your peers can promote this and encourage your security organizations to join these sharing groups in trust circles towards anonymous, that will really help facilitate and accelerate the growth.
Because one of the things that we have seen in Mexico, and I know elsewhere in Latin America, is when a financial institution is attacked, and that attack is successful, they tend to withhold information. They tend to be secretive. They tend to instead of sharing this information, and there is a way to share it to make sure that you comply with law and they do not know and you don't disclose your vulnerabilities. So centralized institution that curates information, that makes it transparent, but also confidential, will help a lot in these endeavors, because we need to learn from each other. And this is what worries me the most in a place like in America that's fragmented, and that although you have very good institutions investing tons of money of cybersecurity, is if you don't create this ecosystem of protecting each other and protecting the system. But because at the end of the day, we're part of this system. We're not an isolated basis.
That's exactly right. That's a very understandable but advanced way of thinking about it, and it's worked. There's been really great success to deliver resiliency to the financial system in the United States that has arguably been the most attacked, system in the world in the banks. So I think it's great that you're taking a leadership role in executing this. And this is my outside opinion. It's up to you to determine. Don't wait for the government. All they gave was $2 million 5 years after the president told them to do so. You don't have time to wait. So the threats are knocking on the door today. And I believe that you're going to have this led through the commercial institutions that own the risk. And then maybe the government will follow, but you really have to lead.
And also the cybersecurity firms that contributed early on in the process.
That's right.
That guided everybody to be part and to be the centerpiece of that. Yes. And I think this conversation definitely fosters that. So
yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, I think everybody is thinking on the same terms. So we'd love to hear Pablo and Agustin sharing a little bit of their perspective on what they're seeing in Argentina and how they want to continue adding into the conversation that we're having here around that collective defense approach.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, first, Interbanking. What is Interbanking, no? Interbanking is a B2B company. So it's we are a banking aggregator. So it's like an open banking solution, but for companies, no? And we work directly with companies that use our platform to make high value transfers, pay tax, pay services, etc. So for us, obviously, it's very important to have a collective fencing strategy with the whole ecosystem, not just with banks or financial institutions, with companies too, because we are in the same problem. In Argentina, we have an active community since many years. We know together, 20 years ago. We have a fluent communication. We talk all the time. We share information quickly. We have practice tools. We have teams, incident of teams. We share activities to prevent and respond to security issues. But really, we need to continue these actions in a more formal way, is my opinion. I think we need to add the financial regulator to build a framework security, okay? Not just collaborations based in people. No? I think we have a important objective to the future. And I'm with Agustin. I don't know if Agustin like to share to me.
Yeah, thank you, Pablo, and thank you everyone to invite us. Trying to complement Pablo's comments, we think that to have an ecosystem is very important because we operate in highly interconnected environment, and a security issue in one financial institution could impact it directly in the whole ecosystem. Interbanking, as Pablo said, operate with all the banks in Argentina and provide financial services to many companies there. We have deep connection and interaction with all the system. The collaborative strategy of cybersecurity, must be considered seriously by all the actors in our industry to improve day by day and to try to construct a harder system. Pablo comment about security community in Argentina, and I need to reinforce that we must maintain this type of space, but we need more formal ways. And maybe, as Pablo said, the regulators can help us to do that job. Thinking about how to create or maintain macro ecosystem of collective defense groups, we believe that we must balance the privacy and business of each organization with our common objectives to have a safe ecosystem. Some action to execute would be maybe have a formal collaborator agreement between all the actors in the ecosystem, and maybe in this way, regulators can provide us the mandatory framework to enforce it. The sharing of technical information must happen through formal and standardized channel and based on a common protocol that indicate what type of information is allowed to share in all organizations to prevent or alert to the rest of the ecosystem. On the other hand, maybe we can execute more cybersecurity simulation exercises, simulating incidents that may affect the financial system with the participation of all the stakeholders, isn't it? And finally, incident response team, that Pablo said too, or functions in all institutions can work coordinated when the event happen and have tested common procedures to respond in this type of situation. We think that this type of initiative can help to create a strong or stronger ecosystem, maybe sharing experience and information, as we said. And I don't know, we think that the best form or the best way to construct a higher or bigger ecosystem is working together.
Thank you, Pablo. Agustin, John.
Yeah, a couple quick comments on your two comments, gentlemen. Spot on. And I think you really did an excellent job of building more formal structure that does exist and can be regulated from other countries, particularly things we've done and matured over time, because we learned a lot over 20 years. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, the first time we had this, it didn't work that well, right? Mm-hmm. So go right to what did work well from lessons learned from our mistakes over the years. So those frameworks exist, the information sharing documents, the formal sharing structure, the technical protocols that allows people to share in a way that we're not just filling up each other's email inboxes with more information, we're actually delivering it in a structured way that's actionable. So those opportunities exist. The other comment I wanted to make, people think of banking as business to consumer, B2B as the fastest rising loss profile in the US and Canada. Small and mid-sized businesses are under attack dramatically. The last thing, there's a comment around we should break this beyond the financial institutions into other organizations. So often people think of threats follow money, right? We're going after the bank. We got to go rob a bank, go to the bank. It's not what you do as a business. It's what you have that's valuable to an adversary. So you saw retailers getting hacked because they had credit card data. And now with ransomware, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, as long as you can pay a ransom, as long as you have money. So the information sharing, certainly beyond the banking system, I think is a good idea in Latin America, and bring it together, because again, time is your enemy. So you don't have time for all these sectors to build up their own ecosystem. I think you could really jumpstart this, leveraging all the work that's already been done in this area, and bring together a collective defense in Latin America and do it pretty quickly. And you guys have commented really well on the structure. The last comment is I would invite the regulators in each of your countries to join the formal board. So you have them already part of the organization, and that where commercial sector can lead, and you can pull them along, and then maybe they'll be able to get the government more active and engaged from that level. But don't wait, act, but pull them along with you. And I think that'll be really helpful to advancing the progress.
No, thank you for complimenting that, John. I think, it's
Thank
from
you.
those lessons learned, it becomes interesting because we can speed up that process, and we're in a pretty good space that we can close the gap faster versus having already all these different things across the region separately. When we have a white sheet of paper where we can start executing the right direction fast, right? So thank you for complimenting that piece. And Andre, maybe you can share with us a little bit of what's going on in Brazil. I know there's a little more regulation than other countries in Latin America, but still, threats are all over the place. We're seeing a lot of groups from Brazil trying to face and attack other regions in Latin America, especially. But I would love to hear your comments on that and what you guys are doing.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure and honor to be in such important panel. Maybe 3 points here to add to the discussion. The first one, when we talk about collective defense, and I think that was the point of John right now, we need to look beyond the financial services industry, because if you look at one way, you have the financial service industry. So you have your peers with whom you need to exchange information, but you also have your supply chain, your ecosystem, and maybe sometimes that's where the weakest link is. And as kind of the major institution of an ecosystem, you have also the duty to help get this ecosystem stronger. And so that's point number one. Point number two, as Accenture being one of the leads in incident response in Brazil, particularly in Latin America, I lead Latin America. We've been seeing firsthand how this exchange of information is important. For instance, back in 2019, the adversary Defray 777 started a major campaign in December 2019, and in March 2020, start reaching Brazilian companies. And so if they were exchanging information, only one would be strike, the other ones would be very prepared for that. And finally, what we are doing here, we have the central bank regulating these for the financial industry specifically, but we still lack of regulation for other industries. And what we have in FEBRABAN, the Federation of Banks here, it's the work that John had described back in 1998 in the US. We started as 2 years ago with the Federation of Banks in Brazil, doing a cyber lab where we have CTI, a cyber threat intelligence organization, also with training, also with cyber exercise. So we exchange a lot of information about what's happening in the world and what's happening in the market in Brazil with all the banks, more than 300 banks that are part of FEBRABAN. So this is being very helpful to be a little bit ahead of the adversary. So the 3 points that I want to add to the discussion here.
I don't know, John, if you have any comments or.
I think all the points are well taken.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's the whole idea, just to continue having the conversations and the discussions across countries and intellectual people, try to connect the dots with each other. So why don't we go with you, Barbara, and get a little sense about what's going on in Uruguay?
Thank you, Mauricio, and thank you, HSBC and Metabase Q, for the invitation to participate in this panel with these distinguished panelists. I would like to provide a little bit of a complementary perspective. This is obviously a very important topic. Cybersecurity is a risk that can be devastating for individuals and companies, because if your account is hacked, you can lose all your money. But the point is that this is a risk that you can completely avoid. So we have a risk that with a potentially huge impact that can be fully avoided if we collectively do something about it. So banks are investing increasing amounts of money in the security of their systems, regulator issuing norms that make fraud more difficult, laws being enacted, but hackers become more sophisticated. So the only way to avoid fraud, to really eradicate fraud, is through information and through education. Financial literacy is a bit about making informed decisions, about understanding the risks you're facing and protecting from them. So I applaud HSBC and Metabase Q for having put together this comprehensive regional program and offer it for free. This is truly a contribution. So thank you for that. So now to Uruguay. Our country too is facing a significant increase in cyber attacks, as well as new forms of fraud, which goes hand in hand with an increase in the use of digital channels. So far in Uruguay, all the detected cases were those of people unwillingly giving their personal information to hackers, which siphoned money from the accounts. And although the bank systems were not vulnerated, clients complained to the banks. Addressing these cases not only takes a lot of time and work, but it entails reputational risk. And in Uruguay, the clients that were hacked went to the press, but they also went to parliament. So banks had some kind of headline risk. And people do not, and the only thing people understand is the account at the bank, money is gone. So reputational risk. So what are we doing? We're pursuing various initiatives, and by being relatively small and well connected, and by speaking to each other, we do many of the things John and you all were describing. So at the individual bank level, banks are constantly investing in cybersecurity, training employees, raising awareness through marketing campaigns. Each bank has monitoring mechanism and continuous reviews. So multiple authentication factors have been institutionalized. So a lot of work on the banks. But at the banking association level, which I'm representing today, the Uruguayan Banking Association, we have a working group where we share experiences and suggestions, and where we analyze and discuss initiatives. We have a WhatsApp group amongst the banks when one bank let to the others know if they were hit by a Trojan virus, sharing the content of the email, etc., or if they come across a new form of fraud. We immediately share it with the rest. We interact and collaborate with regulators, participate in working groups, jointly do protocols. We also do joint awareness campaigns together with the central bank and government agencies, and we are working in various financial literacy initiatives at various levels. So this is what we do. And before closing, there is much more that we can do, but to do it, but in order for the banks to do it, we need more tools. So what do we need in Uruguay? Particularly, we need new measures to combat fraud that allow for a more agile and coordinated action within the financial system. For example, to be able to share information when an investigation of clients who have lost funds because of having been victims of fraud, of scam, we need to share that information. If we are investigating something, we need to share it with the other banks. And today we have a legal impediment to do it because of the banking secrecy law. Furthermore, we have observed cases of criminals that once they stop operating with a financial institution, they introduce themselves as clients in another one, continuing with the criminal activities. And right now in Uruguay, Parliament is debating a cybercrime bill that would give us the required tools. It would allow for exchange of information between entities, of course, exceptionally and with the specific purpose of preventing fraud. It will allow for greater effectiveness in the recovery of funds, preventing the same criminal from acting through different agents of the financial and payment system without being noticed. And with this law, a record of people who have committed cybercrimes will be created. And entities will be authorized not to execute orders if there is suspicion that something happened. And also by having this record, institutions will be able to check that registry before opening an account. So basically the two main points or things that we think are very important we need to do is information. This is critical to both generate awareness, but also to allow for prevention. And the second one, agility. To be able to detect and prevent fraud. And once the fraud has been completed, faster interaction amongst institutions and blocking of the funds. And this also comes with greater opportunities of recovery. So there is much that has been done, but there's so much that we still must do. And if this one takeaways is the name of this conference, right? Collaborative and collective intelligence and collaborative defense among all stakeholders is key.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing. I think it's super insightful. And the more we hear all this is the type of conversations, everybody's doing different things. But I think it's a time for all of us to think in a bigger perspective, start collaborating more in a more formal way. But going into that one, in Chile, I know you've had a couple of years that have gone in interesting directions in the financial sectors as well as other ones, government, pharmaceutical, etc. But if you can share with us a little bit of what's going on, how you guys been acting the last couple of years in a sophisticated environment there to prevent all these attacks from happening, it will be great.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation to participate in this closed session, for allowing us to share our vision of a collective defense. So today we know that one of the most attractive industry for cyber criminal is the financial industry in all this field. So, and the cyber criminals are using more complex, innovative technical practices, processes every day. So that is a very challenge for us. And in this matter, banks in Chile are fully aware of the effects of cyber attack, which we have already experienced in the past, Therefore, we are in constant learning process, and we are trying to maintain and secure and resilient ecosystem. For the financial institution must play an active and relevant role in generating industrial capability to provide a coordinated response to crisis. Therefore, it's also necessary to have regulation that enable this capability. In Chile, financial institutions are regulated by Financial Market Commission, CMF, which has established a series of rules that establish guidelines, requirements, and good practices that are considered by banks in their operations. So one of the proposed this regulation is to establish a cooperative alliances between financial institutions, providing the industry with the development of collective defense. So in this context, in 2018, the board of directors of Association of Banks, they agree to create a working scheme called Virtual Task Force. So under the slogan, and in cybersecurity, we do not compete. They compete in products, marketing, other things, but in cybersecurity, not. The BTF, which has a board and working committee that are composed of executive in charge of the risk management and cybersecurity of their bank. So the BTF aim to establish protocol and coordination and collaboration process for crisis management and intelligence sharing on cybersecurity threat that may affect the financial sector. So since 2020, of part of BTF evolution process, we have an intensive work at this day, being done to strengthen capability to take immediate proactive action under an early warning model to respond to evolving cyber incident or threat. This early warning system enabled to BTF member to acquire a situational awareness to understand the context and the impact of the situation, with the aim to projecting a future state for decision making and decision making and minimizing the risk. That is the key for us. When look the panorama with the situational awareness and early warning system model, we feel more strange like financial industry. These joint actions are possible thanks to the development of the trust between organizations. It's not hard work and requires discipline, as well as constant communication and contact with the member of the coordination groups like BTF. That is the way for the bank. And this way we have been working has allowed us to agree to expand our perimeter of participants during this year by in according other relevant actors such as banking support service, FMI, and soon key service provider, among others. It has been a relevant experience because many of these players or actors instantly recognize the value of this type of group of coordination that drive the financial industry as a single organization when it's under attack. So for the bank, it's the way to make the collective defense. So that I have been supporting with you, look at collective and intelligence defense.
Thank you so much, Juan, for sharing with us some of the things that you guys are doing in Chile to be proactive. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit out of time. We're getting into the last 10 minutes of the conversation. I think this topic has a lot of things that we can discuss, talk about. We're excited because, you know, these conversations need to continue happening. But we would like to hear if anybody has any conclusions in 30 seconds that would like to share or something like that before we pass it back to John and Jorge. Yes, Barbara, go ahead.
If I may, I think it's crystal clear. We are all in agreement. I think it was Pablo who just said, competitors do collaborate in these things, and we are here all together, right? So information sharing, collective intelligence. That's if there's one thing we all agree on is that, right? And to financial literacy, so that because the only way to avoid this is for people to know what they have to do and not, right?
Thank you. I don't know if anybody, Andre or Pablo, or wants to compliment. Go ahead, Pablo.
No, I think would you like to?
No, I think that we share a similar experience. I think that we are in the same page with the best way to work in this with this type of message or problems, no, that we have to have in this type of industry. And I think that we need to reinforce or to work more together with maybe the region to reinforce or to be higher in this type of activities.
Yes, I love the example of the casino. Exactly. It's a good example.
And it's real. Everybody sees it, they look at it, and it's something that you actually relate to. So I think it's the same thing in a different type of setting, no, on the attack. So you were going to say something, Andre, I think.
No, yeah, I just want to add that beyond the collective defense, the collaboration, there is a shortage of secured personnel. Only in Brazil, we have 400,000 openings, and we form like 2,000 or 3,000 specialists each year. So it's a huge gap that we also need to collaborate with universities, with other actors to really fulfill, because this is also something. It's another big threat for everyone.
Yeah, the one comment I'll make on that, it goes back to the economic lens of scarce resources. As you have limited resources to attack this huge problem, you have to pick what's important. And if you could challenge your security team and your organizations with, say, tell me what the most important thing you're working on today is and why, you'll begin to put in their mind that they have to protect the biggest threats to the bank. And you might have to accept the risks associated with some lower impact items to focus on what creates the big impact items for your institutions. So in scarce resources, you really have to focus on what's important to be successful in managing the most amount of risk, per investment of resource. The other thing I will say that has been an epic failure in different industries and certainly across governments, and I know in the US financial services system, is informal information sharing. When everybody just shares information and you go to group lists and emails and it's unstructured and this just happened, that bad thing happened, it's like your alarm going off all the time in your house and you just say, unplug it. I don't want the alarm on anymore. So unless you have formal, structured, actionable intelligence in a way that the collective can use efficiently, you're actually increasing the problem by adding noise versus reducing the problem by adding actionable intelligence. So I would encourage you to consider a formal, organized, actionable structure.
I think I recorded it.
Out of
I
this.
recorded that last statement because I couldn't agree with that more. I think that this actionable, concrete, formal, everybody has good faith and wanting to collaborate, but we need to find the correct way to collaborate.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we are never gonna protect ourselves.
That's right.
It's been a privilege, truly, John and everybody else, to have you here in the HSBC Mexico Tower. So I learned a lot from you guys and from the panelists.
No, Jorge, thank you for believing in this program and being behind the scenes to make this happen. I think between all of the participants that we had across all these different topics, everybody's been talking about awareness. Everybody's been talking about how Latin America needs to take it to the next level. And I think, John, as you're saying, and we all recorded the statement, is if we listen to every country, everybody has interests and are doing different things. And there's groups informally that are trying to protect themselves and trying to do things in the most meaningful way. But I think you nailed it. I mean, until we get something that is a little more structured, lessons learned, and we all start working.
Industrialized.
Exactly, industrialized in a way that we can all collaborate and feel that we're really getting something out of it and contributing to it. It's really going to make a difference because I think everybody has the intentions. And that's the main reason on why we believe that, having you and everybody around that has done this not only in one country, but globally, becomes quite important for us because the lessons learned are already there, plus all the information that people are doing in different countries is going to be critical for us.
I mean, the beauty of this is there's no invention required.
Yeah.
There's no innovation required. It's just saying, let's take the best of what people have done before and do it here.
Yeah.
It's literally, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So let's find the best things that have been done around the world and do it here. And you can just leapfrog everyone else.
Yeah, and I think just making it here as part of the closing panel from a Metabase Q, we'll try to coordinate and get everybody's input based on these lessons learned to try to make sure that by 2023 we have something more formal in that perspective, that everybody's part of it, that we feel that it's an independent platform, that we all benefit to it, that can just contribute to the ecosystem in the region. So count on that from our end. And we just want to thank everybody for participating. I know time is around the corner. If anybody wants to get more engaged, there's more conversations, how to reach all of us. Again, HSBC, thank you for organizing this. Every panelist, we thank you for sharing what's going on. And John, thank you for your time. I know time is always the critical piece, and we're excited that you really are helping us shape this across Latin America. So for us, that means a lot. So thank you again, everyone, and talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Same
you.
to
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You.